Hello, everyone. Thank you. Thank you for organizing this and putting it together, and for the other speakers, because there was some really nice setup in there for me. And I'll also be able to cut out some slides. I'll just preface this by saying that Maria Kanaki was originally scheduled to give this talk, and she's been with the Consortia since pretty much the beginning. I'm a little newer, and so I'll look to you to correct any mistakes you hear me make, preferably not in public unless it's really bad. But yeah, if I don't know an answer to something during the discussion, I will tell me who you are, and I'll try to get you the answer. So this is really what I wanted to talk about today. The standards and innovation and NIST's role in standards and measurements, and then also a little bit about the cements and concrete consortia. So kind of what I see here is there's a lot of really cool activity going on, and I've seen a number of I really liked your road closed slide, and kind of would like to take that. And actually, I texted my colleagues, and they're like, "Yeah, we've been talking to him, so we can continue that conversation." And it's really, that's kind of where I want to get to here. So don't really need to talk about this. This has been covered, and you probably knew it coming into the room. Same thing here. Been covered in a couple different ways. And a lot of these things have also been pointed to. I want to leave this slide up for just a second, though. And when I look at this, it's opportunities and barriers, right? And so the opportunities are these new ways of approaching this problem all throughout the life cycle, or through the value stream, if you want to talk it that way, from the optimized manufacturing all the way to the carbon capture, utilization, and storage piece. And as we've already heard today, many of these new things, this change that we have, that people, it's not just engineers, right? It's everyone doesn't like change generally. There's books written on it. Basically when we have these new pieces, we need to have the educational components. We need to think about what's needed to support the changes, right? And so in each one of these spaces and in between the spaces, there are opportunities that we need to make sure we fill in the gaps so that we can accelerate these processes. From the NIST perspective, a lot of those things look like measurement challenges, right? We're the National Metrology Institute. We do measurements, we do standards, we do technology. And so there's just a number of them listed here, from how do we measure the effectiveness of carbon capture, carbonate content. These are a lot of these involve, they either are or involve measurement challenges. So there's a link between standards and innovation, and we just heard a little bit about that from a different perspective. My perspective, well, actually, often anecdotally we hear standards can limit innovation, which I think I'm sure that has happened in the past, but I think that there's sort of if you do standards right, if you do standards development right, that's not what you end up with. And so, this innovation is when you get this new, different, and valuable product that gets out there. And that's what we're talking about now. We're talking about these cements and concretes that are going to have lower embodied carbon. Really, a lot of the value for that you get through this is the participation in the standards development, because you get this communication. We were talking about this earlier today also. It helps the companies innovate through the increased engagement and communication with stakeholders, competitors, just across the board. And a lens that I have found useful to think about, this standards and innovation and the value of it is through the economic functions of standards, right? So we talk about things like codifying knowledge, reducing variety, securing quality through things like performance levels, and achieving compatibility. If you look at it through these lenses, you could imagine that they could be positives or negatives depending on where who you are in the value chain, what you do. For example, if we're developing consensus-based standards in many fora, right? That's something that's going to disproportionately disadvantage smaller businesses and organizations because they need to track all that, right? They don't have the ability to do that potentially, and also things like reducing variety, right? This is something that helps with economies of scale, but it also changes the nature of innovation, right? So now you're innovating within a box rather than having these wild disruptive innovations, right? And so all these things are things we need to be thinking about and are really an argument for why to participate in standards development and things like the consortia that I'm going to describe a little bit, because this is where we can talk about these things before things get too far down the road. And essentially, this is really where we want to be. We want standards to support the growth and emergence of the new technologies we're developing. We want to be confident in the quality and reliability of the products, in this case, the cements and concretes, the low-carbon cements and concretes. And through all this, we want to accelerate the market adoption. So I'm just going to spend a couple minutes talking about NIST. Sometimes it's like the green cement thing. I always assume people know what NIST is, but it's kind of a small organization and not everyone really knows. Although I would like to see more actually green cement, that'd be cool. So NIST's mission, we reside within the federal government, within the U.S. Department of Commerce, and our mission is to promote U.S. innovation and industrial competitiveness through measurement science, standards, and technology, so to improve economic security and quality of life. I guess really the takeaway here is just sort of the size of our organization, and we're located in Gaithersburg and Boulder, and we have a lot of science, deep science, but we're very collaborative, working with all across the federal government, internationally, and the private sector and civil society. We're kind of broken up into two areas. We have laboratory programs. This is our science. This is where we do our science in our laboratories. It's also where our standards coordination office is. And then we have these extramural facing programs like the Manufacturing Extension Partnership, and the Baldrige Performance Criteria and Awards. And so we take our laboratory capabilities and core expertise, and then we work externally through things like consortia, in this case, and through our other partners, and also through SDOs throughout the whole standard cycle. And what I should have done here is put a larger circle, because this is not just a single set of loops. It loops back around to the top, and it continues, because what we learn through those interactions is what we need to be working on in our core laboratory capabilities moving forward. I don't think we need to talk about this too much, but these are a lot of the measurement services that NIST provides. Support over documentary standards, calibration services, reference data, and reference materials, and they're all integral to the measurement infrastructure. I included this here kind of as a background to talk about our consortia models that we use. This is just showing a number of consortia in a particular area, in this case biotechnology, so we're kind of moving pretty far away from cement and concrete. But these have really accelerated the U.S.'s position in biotechnology. Genome editing, flow cytometry, microbial testing methods, all these things were put together is because the industry needed them, and now we're coming together to put an integrated alliance to continue to connect these different players as these industries grow. So this is what I'm really here to talk to you about, the low carbon cements and concrete consortium. Everything else is kind of background. So this started in 2022, and it was in support of NIST carbon accounting and decarbonization program. It's pre-competitive and creative-based and operates through in-kind support. There's no fees associated with it. Currently, there's 52 organizations from the private sector. That's supposed to be private and public sector. And it works through a steering group and 4 working groups. And you can see the list there, and if I missed anyone, please let me know after. We work through steering group meetings, working group meetings. They occur every 2 months, and then once a year we have a full consortium meeting. There's currently 4 working groups within the consortium, and they are in different stages of their life, I guess. The quantifying carbonates is really probably the furthest along, and in that working group, they work to identify the measured challenges and opportunities for quantifying carbonates in cements and concretes. And you can see they've got a couple of different ways listed here they do that, and we'll talk about some of the things that are coming out of that in a minute. Performance specifications, they look at evaluating the applicability of existing materials, mechanical, structural, and durability tests for low carbon materials. They also identify and address gaps in performance-based specifications, and they do terminology and definitions. Carbon accounting is a newer working group, or a little less further along working group. And they identify and address areas that are in need of more accurately quantifying carbon emissions and industry decision support. Right? And they provide a common set of carbon accounting and LCA-related terminology, another terminology piece, which is often associated with a consortia. And then there's, and they identify current limitations or issues using carbon accounting in decision making. Finally, there's the innovative materials, and I think that's a place where there's a lot of opportunity from things I've heard today. Synthesizing and disseminating information on how do we get these innovative materials out there and deployed. So, addressing barriers. Let's see. So I'll just go real quick through some of the things, an update on what we've been doing in some of these groups, and then I'll pass it off. So the quantifying carbonates, some of the accomplishments, they've been grouped. The blue is really associated with cements, and the current projects over in the orange are more about concretes. But we've been working or put together a draft test method for the determination of CO2 in cements. We have a measurement context paper out there. I understand that this will be out in December, is the last I heard. And then we have 6 benchmark materials in the final stages of preparation. I think there's a question about one of the materials, about what, how we handle it going forward, but those are pretty far along. And currently we're working on measuring CO2, sequestration, and hardened concrete. And we have some challenges and activities listed there. We have a lot of work in the specifications group on prescriptive versus performance specifications. We know most specifications include elements of both. We want to try to move towards the performance specifications where the desired end result is described and the composition is not defined. But we need to make sure that we understand all the underlying questions around how do we do that the right way. One of the things we've been talking a lot about is a wish list. What would be included in an ideal performance-based low-carbon cement specification? This is talking about terminology. How do we, and we have this going on in two working groups, but how do we talk about, how do we use the right language so that we're not having the kinds of errors in communication that often occur in these new spaces? The Innovative Materials Working Group has been really working to understand what the problems are using this fishbone approach. We're trying to understand the barriers. That's a place that we could, we're really looking to make sure that we understand where the low-hanging fruit is and where we can make the most impact. On the carbon accounting, you already saw this, the terminology, identifying real-world issues with using carbon accounting, case studies, identifying areas where greater clarity is needed in carbon accounting and LCA. So this is just a little pitch. If you're not involved in the consortium, you do want to be involved. There isn't any proprietary information shared. There are no fees. There is a CRADA, which can be a barrier, but we've worked through those in most cases. And you can reach out to lowcarbonconcrete@nist.gov. You can reach out to myself. And for members, there's going to be an informal meeting on Tuesday. This is just showing we've had our 2023 meeting in Boulder, and this recent meeting, 2024, was in Frederick, and we've done some really interesting tours. And these are the contacts. So thank you.